Hey, you like cars? We back. We are back. Now, don't even look behind me. Okay? Don't look behind me. It's not set up, okay? If you're looking at the video and if you're not, like and subscribe to the channel and to the podcast. But before we begin, how we usually begin, okay? This is the CarQuicks Podcast, episode 107. 107. We're moving along. But welcome back. How y'all doing out there? How you feeling? Your friends, your family, your loved ones, your children. I hope they are blessed. I hope you are doing well. I hope the goals are being met. I hope new goals are being put on the board, on the vision board. And hope things is going as planned. The prayers are being answered. The things that you are looking forward to are being fulfilled. And if there are things not going your way, that we are making it through those trials and tribulations as we do all the time. But today we discuss something enjoyable. We're talking about stuff that we love, cars, automotive industry. Now, as I said before, the backdrop, the background, you're looking at the video, it ain't set up. Okay. I told you last week it wasn't going to be set up. I said, listen, don't put me up for that. But we do have a plan because me and my wife are talking about an idea I had. She came with some new ideas sprinkled in that little saison. And now I know what we're going to do. Okay. So we're going to execute that. I don't know at what point in time because the schedule is stacked. Okay. We got kids, school, changing jobs, events coming up, life, things, all that. So there has to be grace. Okay. Give me grace on this backdrop. Okay. But when it is done, oh boy, will it be fire. Now, besides all that, let's talk about this car. Let's drive right into the news. I want to discuss a couple things, and then I'm going to end this with some thoughts about something that had happened within the car community situation. And that wasn't even a big deal, so I don't even want to give it that much sauce because it wasn't that big of a deal. But let's just talk about Honda. The Prelude got officially announced completely. We already knew about the Prelude. I talked about it plenty of times. I gave him my opinion on it, but it finally made its way to the headlines as an official release from Honda, which is funny that there are so many comments talking about just what it was. And I always forget that I'm constantly reading automotive news. So I know about things and I remember them, and I don't take into account that other people are just seeing whenever the announcement comes and they're not busy spending their lives trying to track down car news like I am. So when it came out that it was a hybrid, 200 horsepower, 232 pound-feet of torque, non-manual, not even a traditional automatic, it is an eCVT, which is not even really the right term to use on that because really there's no like gear ratio variability. It is a direct like drive electric motor that is attached to the gasoline engine that is deciding and dictating the behavior of the shifts based on the power control unit. And in the Prelude, what Honda was talking about the most was that it has a sport mode of it that is kind of basically tuned, and I'm using quotations because this is all controlled by the computer, tuned to be more of a sporty drive. Now, we know that it has a Civic Type R suspension. There is Brembo brakes on there. It is a Grand Tour, okay? It is not some well, you know what? Hold on. Let me not say it's not some back road runner because honestly, back roads, if it's running CTR suspension and Brembo brakes in capable hands, it will be able to do something. Now, on paper, and the idea and ethos of what the Prelude is now may not have you thinking back roads and all that. And yes, there are better sports driving cars, but I'm saying that it's not incapable of having a little bit of fun when the road gets twisty because they put the stuff in there for that. It also gets 40 miles per gallon. And then the price was getting announced, and not really announced, but the speculation and pretty much people hit the nail on the head. It's going to be around $40,000. And that's what sent a bunch of people like, 40,000? I can get a GR86, BRZ, GR Corolla, older FK8 Civic Type R, maybe even the FL5, depending on the model year and the mileage. And they're right. You can get all those cars. But I never said that the Prelude was trying to replace any of those cars. Once I realized what Honda was doing, I understood that this was no longer the Prelude of the past. And even then, when the Prelude was out in the 2000s, it was, even in the community of modifying cars, it wasn't that common. I knew a friend of mine that had a modified Prelude back in New Jersey, and he was one of few people H22A motor swap and all that. He was one of the few people that had a Prelude, because most of the time it was Integra. The Integra was the shining star, still is, and then it was the RSX, and the Prelude kind of phased out, as we know. So Honda bringing back the Prelude, I kind of just never really held it to some standard that it needed to be some sports coupe that was up to par with the Civic Type R, because from what I've always known and what I recognize is that Honda put all their effort into the Civic Type R as being the front wheel drive king as far as the handling and performance. The Prelude was always like, here's a little bit of a softer coupe. It is fun. It had very cool features like the dual sunroof it had back in the 2000s, and it had a cool design. And I don't take away from what the Prelude was, but I do understand that at this point in time, they do have an Integra Type S. No, it is not a 2-door, but it is a 4-door, and they had four-door Integra, so let's not act like that wasn't a thing, because it was. And then they have the Civic Type R. And I feel like if you're in that realm of trying to get the highest performance from Honda, you need to go get a Civic Type R. Everything else after that is going to be a drop down. A Civic Si is a drop down. Now, if you feel like you need to have a manual and you don't want to go Civic Type R, then the Civic Si exists. Now, if you feel like you wanted a manual and a coupe, you, my friend, are the 1.1% that is looking for that type of car. And I have to say, I'm surprised that even Honda made a Prelude that's a coupe anyways, because 2-door coupes from last time I checked weren't even selling well, let alone cars not selling well as opposed to SUVs. So the Prelude to me actually makes sense to me. I actually like it. I like how it looks. They already show Mugen parts for it. I said the aftermarket in Japan is going to take on for this, because while we all know that Japan has been the birthplace of the modification of these JDM cars that we love, a lot of things are difficult to do out there and they cost a lot. There is a subset of people modifying these cars that they're not looking for max power. They're looking for looks, a little sport tuned exhaust, and that's it. They don't want to change nothing else. There is a market for it. That is where the Prelude lies. If you enter the Prelude looking to add single turbo kits and everything else, you're looking in the wrong spot. If you're looking at it like, I like how this looks, I want something that looks good, I'm going to modify it on the exterior and the aesthetics, I'm going to do stuff on the interior when it comes to the sound, maybe change out the seats, swap out steering wheels, but ultimately, I'm just going to keep the powertrain as is. I might add a little bit of an exhaust in it to give it some tone, but I'm okay with that, and I don't need any more power. That's the market for this, and that's a big market. Like I've said before, we are wide-bodying Priuses, okay? If we're doing that, they're gonna do something with this. Maybe, just maybe, somebody will take it and throw a little bit of VIP treatment, which isn't a traditional VIP car. If you know about that style and that culture of it, I understand. But I'm just saying, a little sprinkling of it, there can be things done. So I don't think the Prelude is bad. I do think that there is a place for it. I wouldn't get wrapped up in the cost of it, because price point on that is made for the person that wants to buy that. If you're looking at $40,000 and talking about how the other cars that you can get, then it's not for you. It's the same way when people talk about the cars I've chosen, saying you could have got, and I always say, but that's not what I wanted. But if you want that, by all means, make your way that direction. Prelude is going to be the same thing. You cannot look at this like something that the Civic Type R could have been, or something of like a 2-door coupe that was as fast as the Type R, because that's not what Honda's doing here. So it's been announced, it's coming. You will see it in your dealerships. I do want to drive it. I'm excited to drive it, ECVT and all. I am a manual person, but I'm just saying I'm excited to drive it. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, moving along to some other kind of faster news, no pun intended. Porsche announced a new 911 Turbo S. Now, if you're living under, I don't know what type of rock, but a giant one, okay, a mountain, then you'll know that the Turbo S is, everybody knows what the Turbo S is. That is their highest performing version of the 911. It is faster than even the GT3 and the resorts of straight line speed. So the new Turbo S, let's just get out the numbers. 701 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds. it did the Nürburgring lap time 14 seconds faster than its predecessor. That is wild. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the new direction of Porsche when it comes to their motors, the 911T hybrid introduced a 3.6 liter flat six that had an electric turbo on it, a single one. This adds a second one, which is why we get over 700 horsepower, 8-speed PDK. There's no manual. Listen, if you want a manual turbo, you better go get them old ones because guaranteed that they will be sought after in short order. So if you want one of those, go grab that. 1.9 kilowatt hour battery, same with the GTS model, the T hybrid, because you can use a little bit of the I don't know if you use a little bit of battery on its own, electric wise, but regardless, it is. So you have a power increase. The pounds are heavier. It is a heavier car. It's 180 pounds heavier. What can you do? Battery, electrification, electric turbos, this and that. It's going to weigh heavier. It does still have Porsche's traction management system. Now, they did say this. This is from George Bergmeister. He talked about the vehicle because he's a test driver for them. He said, you don't feel the weight gain. On the contrary, the car is much more agile, has more grip, and is significantly faster than its predecessor in all relevant sections of the track. The new lap time was 7 minutes and 3 seconds, and that is what he's talking about. Now, obviously, in the hands of him, a professional, he's going to inch out and feel all the intricate details. This is a Grand Tour, okay? So being worried about an extra 180 pounds in a 911 turbo doesn't really matter in that regard. However, I will say this. With this electrification and with the weight gains, there is something to be said about whether it continues or if we stop at some point. Because I will say this. We can't keep saying it's okay to gain more weight with the idea of it having more power and just being faster by the metrics, because there is something to say about the weight. Now, this isn't super heavy, it's 3,800 and change pounds, but its rivals, the one that compete with this, like an AMG GT, so to speak, is 4,300 pounds. So we're much lighter than that, okay? And those are Grand Tourer type of cars. That's what this is. That's what this is. Very fast, can cover miles and miles at speed. Now, aero, the reason why I can do that lap time that fast is because there's ample amount of aero activity. Okay, we got an active shutters in the front, we got an active front spoiler, we have an active diffuser, we got an active rear wing. A lot of aero activity. As I said, that's what's helping this lap time. That's why it's so much faster than it was previously. Now, with all things being said, if you're not on the Nürburgring and if you don't have the skill set to even drive the Nürburgring at that level of speed, then you might be 14 seconds slower. But the 0 to 60 time, the 0 to 100 time, or 0 to 124 mile an hour time of like 6 seconds is what you're really going to feel. And it still handles extremely well. And one of the things it does have is the dynamic chassis control is controlled by a 400-volt electric architecture, which helps them responding faster to pitch and roll. And that's clearly what's aiding all this newfound handling. The price of it is higher, $270,000 before you add deviated stitching and leather wrapped air vents, okay? Because once you're done actually making the 911 Turbo S as you would want, it will be $500,000, okay? You will be in a $400,000 range, clear into the 300s, because some of these options are $30,000, especially if there's a chrono option, carbon, all this. When you start adding that, $350,000 out the door immediately. So the 911 Turbo S is here. I mean, I've always liked 911 turbos. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I know the big one is the GT3, but I love me some turbo. And I actually would probably lean towards buying a turbo myself if I was given the option of GT3 or turbo, because I would have to ask myself, what's my goal here? Like a GT3 is a monster of a track weapon, monster of a street car too. And it sounds glorious, but I would have to ask myself what my goal is. I'm like, am I looking for a track weapon on the street, Grand Tour? Even though I will say this, me personally, if I did get a turbo, I probably would make it look very much like a GT3, just because I like that race car aesthetic on the road. I just like the polarizing effect of it when you see it on the road. So I probably would add some aftermarket stuff to it to make it look very aggressive and still be a turbo. So GT2 RS, there you go. It'll be that, one of those. Now, moving along with the supercars, I do want to get into the big one that happened this week. So, a few podcasts ago, I talked about the 849 Testarossa name popping up in Ferrari's little world when it comes to what they are working on and what they're doing. Now, I speculated that this was one of their new special Icona series. And I thought it was going to be like an SP4 or the just another version of the SP1, the 2, the 3, and just another version of that, because that's what it told me. Because before they had the SP3 Daytona, and it has elements of styling from the Daytona and just the whole iteration. So when I saw Testarossa, I was like, yo, this might be wild. Now I'm going to say this. This is what it looks like. We're just going to get straight to it. I had to sit with this for a while. Like, I was actually going to record this podcast yesterday, but I kind of was thinking about this car, and I was talking to a friend of mine on Instagram, and he was like, I'm waiting to hear your thoughts on this. And I was just mentioning a couple things, but I had to like sit on this for a minute. I want to let me get out the numbers, and then we're going to circle back to just discussing the outside, the look, and just Ferrari in general. Ferrari is one of my favorite supercar manufacturers. Actually, my favorite supercar manufacturer, okay? So I have a soft spot for Ferrari regardless. But let's just get to the numbers. Twin turbo V8 mounted low in the rear. Think of like the SF90 drivetrain, the 296. 1,036 horsepower is what the total is when you combine the 3 electric motors, 2 in the front, 1 in the rear, in between the 8-speed dual clutch transmission. 0 to 60, they said in like 2.4 seconds. However, the SF90 tested at 2 seconds, so this is gonna be faster because it's more horsepower. I don't know if it weighs much more. I think it weighs the same, if not less, but you can get a package that drops it to 66 pounds lighter through carbon fiber and things like that. It has a 6.5 kilowatt hour battery, up to 19 miles of electric only, up to 81 miles per hour. Price tag is going to be $540,000 to $645,000, which is dumb high. Now, here's another thing too. If you remember, currently right now, an SF90 is going for mad cheap, because what they previously were priced at $900,000, it's like $1 million that some people bought them for, has now come down to $500,000, $400,000. So that is something to be said about the replacement to the SF90, which is what this 849 Testarossa is, and whether it can hold that price moving forward. But continuing along, so we have that price. You see the power. We know it's replacing the SF90 because the drivetrain, everything that they're talking about is similar. But now we're going to talk about the looks, okay? You see it here. Here's the Spider version. There's a coupe version. It's in silver. It's in yellow. I've seen it in a variety of different colors. Here's what my thoughts are. Ferrari right now is very much in the game of outdoing themselves when it comes to performance every time they can. Now, here's what I mean by that. Everything for Ferrari is a performance envelope. It is, how can this car be better than the last car? And more so in the performance metric than us talking about if it is evoking an emotion when it comes to how it looks. Now, I do think that there is a better execution with this. Like this car, I always liked, I'm trying to put my thoughts clearly here. I liked the F80 when I first saw it, like immediately, because the squared off look reminded me of the F40. The F40 is a wedge, just squared. It is iconic now because of what that car was, but I'm not going to say that the F40 inherently looked beautiful, so to speak. To me, the F50 looks better. That's just me. But the F80 reminded me of that squared look, that wedge squared look. The F80 looked good to me when I first saw it from the pictures. I was kind of hesitant. I had to wait a second. I looked at it again. I said, you know what? I actually do like how this looks. I had to kind of do the same thing with the 849 Testarossa. The main issue that I think most people have is that the little winglets you see in the front, look at the front end. The front end has these 2 winglets that are kind of like protruding out from the front bumper. And I think that's part of the issue when it comes to how the design looks, because it's a very polarizing look. And it's obviously aimed at aero activity, okay? It's aimed at downforce. It's aimed at performance. If you look at videos they showed of the air flowing around the car, those winglets was pushing the air around their wheel arches, around the car, into the intakes. It was all performance driven. So that tells us that they are designing these cars wind tunnel first. Basically, How does this thing perform? Maybe we can draw out a couple things, but as soon as we hit the wind tunnel, we're tweaking this thing so that it performs faster than a previous car. And I think part of that is our own fault. And I'll tell you what I think by that. As car enthusiasts, if it's not better than the last car, we're calling it a failure. And I think Ferrari is racing up against that, and the performance metrics are getting tighter and tighter. We're talking about reintroducing new GT3s, new 296s, new Ferrari this, new Ferrari that. And every single time, the envelope has to get pushed up. And I do think we're hitting a point where at some point in time, it has to shift where it's like, okay, we've hit an envelope of performance where anything faster, you're going to need to be on a prepared surface. You're going to need to be on the track. You need to have training. You're going to need to be in an F1 car. So for that sake, I do think that there is something that should tweak a little bit where we're like, hey, it's fast. You know it's fast. Now let's start making these things look inherently more beautiful immediately. Meaning, when I first see it, I'm like, oh, that looks incredible. And we have a taste of it. If you look at what they do at the Monterey Car Week, there is plenty of cars from manufacturers that just come out and say, look at how I look. Now, the numbers are good. We still got horsepower and performance, but they weren't touting the numbers. Like they weren't saying, look what this does on the track. Look what this does around this racetrack. Look what it does around the Nürburgring. Perfect example is Gordon Murray with that S1 LM. When everybody saw that, we didn't even ask about the performance. Nobody was like, oh, that looks crazy, but hold on. What does it do around the track? We didn't care. It looked like the new iteration of an F1. So all we cared about was like, that looks absolutely incredible. And if you think about the McLaren F1 from those decades ago, it didn't, when it first came introduced, it had numbers to back it up, but the performance came after this. And it wasn't this, like people weren't lamenting, they weren't loving the F1 even now because its performance envelope was so much higher than cars that came right after it. It was the entire package. And I do think as a Ferrari fan that their road cars should start getting back to the package being in totality and the exterior going back to the fact that we're talking about an Italian brand and things like fashion, food, but aesthetic is a thing of Italian culture. And so the cars should start reflecting that because now the cars are mechanical in design and look, and their function is high performance. Now that's one side of the coin. I'm gonna flip it to another side real quick because I had to talk to my 11-year-old son to get a perspective that I was having in my head. See, I showed him this car. He was like, that looks incredible. And then I showed him the original Testarossa. Now, we all know the Testarossa name is really just about the engine and the heads being in red. If you know about the history of the word Testarossa, it just landed itself on an iconic car with the little air strakes in the doors. We know what it is, Miami Vice vibes, all that type of stuff. I showed him that car. He was like, that's cool. I then showed him the new one. He was like, now give me one of those, okay? And then I was like, you know what? My theory about maybe these names that they're bringing back just being another version of it and not from when we were looking at the cars and we had them on our walls posters. I'm thinking a lot of these car companies are bringing in these names because they have to make something new. There has to be something else. I'm gonna give you an example of this again. I'm gonna keep adding examples, okay? My thought process is running. I was talking to a friend of mine and we were talking about movies, and I was saying, you know, I like if you look at a franchise like Star Wars, I was like, yo, they gotta kind of go back and just do it again all over. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, they keep trying to stretch out the story, but if you're thinking about the generation of like my children now, like they don't care. Like when I talk about the, you know, Return of the Jedi, my son's like, okay, he returned. Now what? Now, and that's where I'm like, a lot of the stuff that we're holding on to, the reason why people of my age and people that have been around a long time to see the beginning of something and see them do Toy Story 5 and be like, yo, we're out of ideas. When I see Disney making the live version of every single classic film, I'm like, yo, we're out of ideas. We're cooked. There's nothing left. I think that's what I'm speaking to is saying these names that we're holding on to have to then start becoming something completely different. Nothing of what we know from the past. And that's a hard thing to let go. So you take the word Testarossa, and my brain was like, air strakes on the side, or we ain't got no Testarossa. Now, somebody did actually show a version of this. John Sybil on Instagram. He does digital design and art. He's an awesome designer. He made this version of the 849 Testarossa, and everybody was like, immediately 1 million times better. Now, of course, in my head, I was like, there's no way the Ferrari designers didn't think that they could implement this element. And I don't think what he did was out of something that they might have discussed. I don't think he just like blazed a new trail. But I think they purposely didn't do it. Going back to what I said before of just introducing something brand new on a name that we have held on to for decades. And that is never going to be easy transition because we are holding on to something that we know of from that time. And they might be like, listen, we're not doing a V12 rear wheel drive with air strakes in the doors supercar anymore. That's not going to happen. So we have to take this name. We have to start developing something else. We have to start adding it into something else. We got to start introducing something else. Now, they could have just named it something else completely new altogether, which could have been another process and just leave the Testarossa name where it's sitting. But there is some equity in the name, and so you still have to bring it along to then introduce something new to kind of get the word and the people spinning. And also, there's another thing about having people on both sides of the fence. Those that love and hate it mean that you might have something very good, but you don't want lukewarm. You kind of want the polarizing of like, I hate it, I love it. And I hate it, I love it. And that's what gets you in the news and the cycle of things. But back to the design. The rear of it, I actually do like. I like the rear of it. The rear wings are interesting because there's two on the side and there's one in the center that's an active aero spoiler that comes up to obviously help with downforce and things like that. But I do like the rear of it, and with the little vents in the center, it does give me elements of Testarossa, elements of like the 512, things like that. It has elements of cars from the past. And the front of it, obviously, with the rendering I showed you was from John Sybil. His was much cleaner without the little air fin strakes in the front. His looked very, very good. I'm still not mad at what Ferrari has done here, even though it isn't immediately in your face like, oh, this is a beautiful design. It's a very, and I use the term aggressive sometimes too much in my head. I'm always using the term aggressive. I got to figure out a different word for that. But it does have a polarizing look. However, in Spider versions and the yellow color and the silver color, I started seeing that flow in that design language. Now, a lot of the cars are starting to look similar, and some people don't like that. The F80 elements are in here too. I always say this name wrong. I'm so mad at myself and not looking up the name of how to say the 12 cylindry Dodici 12 cylindry. I should have looked that name up. My bad. I should have looked up how to say it because I had it in my head. But anyways, the recent wave of Ferrari supercars have a similar look. And some people don't like that. They like the time when the Enzo looked nothing like 360 Modena, or look nothing like the upcoming F430, or look nothing like the 550 Maranello. Like, they like that element of these cars looking different. And that is true. That is nice to have that. But I also know that right now, design language and lineage is playing this role across all car manufacturers where everything has a similar look. That's just how it is. So I know what Ferrari is attempting here. Not attempting, but I know what Ferrari is doing here. They are making sure that the lineage is similar. They're pulling elements from the past, they're making elements from the future, and they're combining it all so that when you're looking at these cars, they do look different. Even though they have similar elements of it, they don't immediately scream that looks like X, Y, and Z. More so than like McLaren. McLaren cars look very familiar across all their vehicles. Ferrari, at least, even though they are similar, it still has distinctive looks. So once I stood back, thought about all that in my head, I was like, I see where they're going. I'm not mad at the 849 Testarossa because I have to remove myself from the name Testarossa and what it meant from us as children when we were looking at a Testarossa. And I have to think about it like, okay, what are we doing moving forward? I had to bring in children from this era, from this generation, and ask them, which one of these two do you like better? And the answer proved my theory. I was like, oh, I see. Y'all don't care about that old Testarossa. It doesn't even give you that emotion. So Ferrari thinking about a new generation of car buyers, they're like, we have to then start catering to them. Because when that wave of multimillionaires comes in that want to buy those type of cars, if they want a Testarossa from the 80s and 90s, they're going to go and buy one. If they want something recent and new, they're going to buy the new one. And maybe that's where we're at right now. I will give them their props on this. Let's talk about the interior real quick. The interior of this car and the recent interiors of Ferraris have been very good, in my opinion. I think Ferrari has been doing an excellent job when it comes to their interiors, and they have done something that has been subtle, but some people may not notice it, but it's the lack of an infotainment screen in the center of the dashboard. Let me give them their round of applause for that. Because you know why? I always talk about some of these interior designs. It's not about the driver. Case in point, the C8 had gotten it upgraded for their interior, and it was screen on screen on screen. I was like, that's a lot of digital real estate for something that's supposed to be a driver-focused car. Now, if you look at this interior, you'll notice that the infotainment system is integrated into the digital cluster for the driver. The passenger has a little display thing in front of them, and that's it. There's nothing in the center except for the gear selector, which looks like a gated shifter from the times of past from Ferrari when they had gated shifting manuals, because we ain't getting no manual again, clearly. But it has that element of it, kind of like a floating design, but it is focused on the driver. And their interiors have been constantly doing that. Even so much so, if you look at the bottom where you see the Alcantara or the color matching to the seat, it looks like each person has its own little cockpit. It kind of like wraps around them. Similar to like the F80, which is focused on the driver, and the passengers like literally there is like second thought. Like, hey, you're just here for the ride. It's me behind the wheel. And that to me is Ferrari focusing on the driver. It leans into the performance metrics of it and the performance design being about the performance. Driver focused supercar. The interior is driver focused. The outside is performance focused. It all kind of meshes together correctly when I start thinking of it in that light. Now, obviously, if I think about it in the ways of what I would have liked, the design that John Sybil did, I definitely would have preferred that one. Or I would have preferred kind of like this retro-ish look into the past with something current in the Icona series. That's what I would have preferred. But when I look at what they're doing and where they're going, I'm not mad at this new A49 Testarossa. And I know in person it's going to look a lot more aggressive, and it doesn't look bad to me. It does kind of look good. It has this just kind of like this polarizing element. It looks like it has a mission and it has a purpose. But I'm also one of those people that can separate my brain into two sides and understand both. I can just be like, I get it. I might have a preference here, but I see where y'all are headed, and I'm not mad at it. I'm still a fan. I can't afford one, but if I ever were to get a Ferrari, it's gonna be an older one. I'll probably go get a 550 Maranello. That's one of my favorite Ferraris. If before I ever get an A49 Testarossa. But if I was in that multi-millionaire bracket and I was one of the Ferrari's clientele that was just getting all the new hot flavor, listen, I'd get one of these too. I'd be like, let me get one of those and give me the Speciale version whenever it comes out of the Stradale. Give me that too. But Ferrari, they're going to continue. This is not going to be the end of it. They're going to pull a name from somewhere else, or just in general, the next version of whatever car they make is going to also do the same thing. But if you still want kind of like a more of a not so polarizing look, the 296. The 296 looks really good. The Amalfi looks excellent. Those are kind of more akin to that kind of swoopy, sexy, sensual design as opposed to the F80, the now A49 Testarossa. Those cars are like, listen, you know what we're here to do. We're here to blister lap times and track times. The other cars can kind of look like, okay, I can cruise in these. I can have fun. So you have options there. Now going on to something completely different. We're jumping into the EVs right now. BMW announced the iX3, which is the electric version of their, I say compact, but it's fairly big. But you know, the i3, the iX3 SUV is an EV, but it's a kind of a big deal. And I'm explaining why. Now, obviously, EVs from BMW, we have done it. We know about it. It's nothing new. However, The iX3 is a big deal because of this design and how it looks. And if you don't looking at the video, subscribe and find it, or go to Spotify, subscribe there and look at the video. The outside look is completely new. It's called like the new class. As far as the concept has gone for BMW for a number of years, of them introducing this new kind of front bumper look that they are introducing. I like this because obviously it's not as ridiculous as like the G80s, and when they first came out, everybody's gotten used to them now, but that's what always happens. But inherently, it still doesn't look cleaner than this to me. This looks better even from the rear of it, as well as how the taillights look. But the main point of this vehicle is because it introduces not only the new design language that's going to happen on the new M3 coming, I'm sure a 7 Series and 5 Series, all of them are going to start getting this new front end. How they look on those cars, I don't know. It looks good here on this SUV, but sometimes what it looks good on an SUV doesn't translate to a car. But let's get to the numbers real quick. This is a dual motor setup. In the highest trim, the iX3 50X drive is 470 horsepower, 475 foot-pounds of torque. The range on the European cycle is 500 miles. The US cycle is probably going to land somewhere around a little bit over 350 miles if I'm doing my math in my head quickly enough. Now, the interior is where I want to discuss the main kind of meat and potatoes of this. The interior, as you can see, it's a lot going on and a little bit going on. This is kind of a funny, conundrum. It's simplistic and minimalist. And as we know, when it comes to EVs, the minimalist look of the screen just sitting on the dashboard, floating around, is kind of the main thing. Okay, I don't really prefer it, but that's just what we're doing right now on most of them. But the main thing of what's happening here is that this whole entire car is powered by BMW Operating System X. There are 4 things happening I'm going to talk about. There's a panoramic screen, if you can look on the screen, that sits at the base of the windshield, like in the driver's line. It covers the entire windshield. There is a center screen, as you can see, that is 17.9 inches. 18 inches of center infotainment screen. There's a multifunction steering wheel, and there's a 3D heads-up display. It's Minority Report. Like at this stage in the game, you're gonna drive this car looking like Tom Cruise trying to figure out who murdered who. Okay, that's what you're gonna be looking like. That's a lot happening. Now, BMW says that none of this stuff is going to distract the driver. I don't know. I haven't driven the car, so maybe it kind of disappears into the distance, and maybe we get used to it. Okay, because sometimes new technology comes out, it's polarized and seems confusing, seems like it's too much, and then we get used to it and it becomes everyday life. Okay. But this kind of technology is what's at the heart of their system. It's like what is powering everything, right? But the steering wheel has what they call shy tech. And the shy tech was like, you're shy, like you don't like meeting people. I'm shy. Shy tech, because it has light up buttons on the steering wheel with haptic feedback that they said that won't distract the driver. They won't have to look off the road. They can kind of feel and see. I guess if you see, you have to look down. So I don't know why they're saying you won't look off the road, but I guess you can kind of feel your way around the buttons to understand what functions are available for you in different modes of the car. Maybe when it's parked and you're driving on a highway, cruise control, and then a 3D heads-up display. I don't even know because I couldn't find a picture of it, but I'm imagining a heads-up display with a lot more visual information, whether it's signage, whether it's things you see on the road, maybe it's a map of like where you're going as far as the Google Maps or Waze or Apple Maps or whatever it may be, navigating on the screen. That's a lot happening. Now, the shy tech thing is funny because the name tells me that they're trying to introduce this in a way where like, hey, it doesn't get in the way. It's kind of shy. It's off in the corner. Shy tech, which I hope they don't try to, I hope that was just like a quotation thing and they'll try to run with the marketing and say shy tech, because it's not going to really resonate with people. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? I just know that what they're aiming at and what they're saying is that it doesn't impede on whatever you're doing as a driver. It is off to the side. Now, what's powering all of this? What is at the main point of this is a supercomputer that I said I mentioned in episode 84 called the Heart of Joy. Now, I know folks, if you're listening, are going to say, bro, this is major marketing jargon. The Heart of Joy in an EV. Now, the reason for this is because, and I'm going to read a quotation I pulled from thedrive.com. A singular super brain that manages the drive system, brakes, charging, energy recuperation, and steering. Now, in that episode 84, I discussed all of this at length, talking about what they're trying to build. Basically, EVs have no emotion. We already know about that. That's the main issue. EVs are kind of numb. They kind of feel like appliances. BMW, being the ultimate driving machine, as they say, knows that if you have an EV that's numb and doesn't feel like anything, saying you're the ultimate driving machine when you were busy for decades talking about how good they were to drive doesn't really work for the future. So you have to evoke some type of emotion. How does that feel when they drive it? I have no idea, but I want to find out. Okay, so BMW, invite me to come experience the heart of joy. Because, as I've said plenty of times, I do enjoy technology and I do like the introduction of something new. So I'm not opposed to the idea of something called the heart of joy bringing joy. Okay, it just may do that. I have no idea what that can kind of feel like, what that can kind of do, but I'm not saying it can't actually work because you don't know what you don't know until you know it, if that even makes any sense. But what I'm saying is, what might sound crazy later on becomes the norm. Okay. I'm sure when somebody was pitching Google and they were like, you can search everything, they were like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. You're not searching anything. Now, it's an everyday way of life. So, Heart of Joy, super brain computers, 4 components of this: screens in the panoramic at the bottom, giant center infotainment system, a steering wheel that has some multifunction capability, and a lot of computing power. Now, of course, somebody's going to say, what does this mean for the longevity of the car? I have no idea, but we are definitely getting to a stage where a lot of these cars, even if you look at the Chinese EVs that are out there from a lot of those companies, the amount of technology that's embedded into these cars, you do have to wonder if, like, how long does that keep up? Now, being in tech, and as far as my career goes and my regular job, I do know that we use a lot of things that are highly complicated that run and run and run. Take your cell phone, for instance. Your cell phone does everything: phone calls, texts, picture, make a movie, play a game, social media, get your email, look up directions, give you food recommendations, where are you going over here, make a plan, put your calendar in. All of that with an all-day battery, with a 4K screen, with 120 hertz and cameras, doing all that in your pocket. And we rely on it every single day, 24/7. We charge it every day. We keep it on the charger. We put battery banks into it, and it keeps running and running. So I do not think that there is not a world where you can have a car with this much technology in it and just run and run and run, because we use technology like that every single day. And you never sit there and be like, oh, I'm worried if my Android, my Samsung's going to like kind of crap on me today because I've been using it all day. You don't even think like that. You're like, this phone better run for the next 5 years. I just spent $1,000. It better not break. So that type of standard, as we move into this EV space of cars and as we move into ICE powered cars and introduce more technology, we are going to get to a place where you don't even worry yourself about that. We're still kind of in the ICE powered ethos of cars where we're like 100,000 miles, 200,000 mile cars is kind of not as common, but they are common for the people that have older cars. But everybody worries about the cost of it. Getting a new car is expensive. So you're worried about it having longevity. So I know when people see all this super brain computers, they're like, man, what happens after the warranty? Because if I got to go in there and say my super brain broke, they're going to be like, hey, man, sorry, I had to tell you, you just go ahead and go get a new one. We can't do nothing with that. So the BMW iX3 is coming, introducing a wave of design, technology, interior updates, and I'm intrigued. I want to drive one. I really do. I want to see what this heart of joy feels like. Keeping up with EVs, though, we got a few to discuss. There is one that came out from Audi. Audi showed off the Concept C, which is replacing the Audi TT. It looks very much like, well, I said the iRobot one, Audi Concept, was a little bit better than this. However, just like the Ferrari 849 Testarossa, I sat with this and I came back and I said to myself, you know what? I actually do like how this looks. Even though initially I was like, the Jaguar designers have infiltrated Audi and we need to figure out how that happened, okay? Because that's what it reminded me of. But the rear look of this, I do like a lot. And the front is extremely polarizing. The CEO said that the car, when it comes out in 2027, is going to look like this. And I have said this before. If we are going to do polarizing designs, just do it. Don't even, if the concept looks like this and you're telling me the car is going to look like this, just make it look like that exactly. Don't try to come out and retweak it and try to make it look a little softer. No, just even with Jaguar, the reason why Jaguar is getting so much flack is because they showed this box of a car from Corolla DeVille's design studio and didn't even release the car. And now we have people sitting there asking like, what are y'all trying to do? Are y'all making this car? Like, what's this? And they adding all the stuff about the past and the history and the new luxury thing. It's too much talking, not enough execution. Just release the car. If it's going to look like that, it's going to look like that. We'll figure it out when it comes out there. They might drive it, experience it, and say, you know what? I like how it looks. At least Tesla, when they had the Cybertruck and it looked so ridiculous, when they brought it out, they're like, here, it's out. You can get the trapezoid on wheels, and people like them. Even I can get with it because it's so polarizing. It looks so crazy. I'm like, fine. So if you're going to do a design like this, let's at least release it. Now, they did say one thing. There is no plans to make an ICE-powered one because I'm sure somebody's going to be like, why can't we stick a 5-cylinder turbo in there from the Audi group and make this thing really, really special, like the real successor to the Audi TT? Probably not going to happen. And honestly, like I've said also, a lot of times they go EV because I think it's easier for them to do it and introduce a new car without having to figure out a brand new motor. Because there's a lot of components in that, and they might just be like, listen, dual motor this, put that in there. They didn't talk about the price. They said the price was somewhere between $60,000 and $180,000. That is a canyon of a difference, okay? A chasm, okay? $60,000 to $180,000, $120,000 spread is absolutely nuts. Now, given what this looks like, and given the current flow of how cars cost, this is $100,000. Like, they're going to introduce this, and whatever the next R8 is, which is probably going to be EV as well, considering that the Concept C TT is, or maybe it's not. But this is going to be well above. It ain't going to be 60,000. If this comes out at 60,000, it's exactly like this, they'll sell a bunch of these. But I do like the design. I sat with it. I was like, you know what? I'm not mad. I do like this. I love the rear. The front of it, sitting low down, does have a very, it's like an angry face actually. And then the side of it is a little plain because everything is just a flat kind of panel. Now, if they figure out a way to kind of add some character to that, it can overall make the design look a lot better altogether. But again, I do like how the Concept C does look. Now, moving on to another EV, Polestar announced the Polestar 5. And I'm just going to do this quickly before I get to the next thing I want to discuss. The Polestar 5 is actually a really good looking sedan. As far as electric sedans go, think Tesla Model S. This is a main competitor. Even from a performance standpoint, the standard base model is a 748 horsepower dual motor setup, and the performance version is 884 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3.8 or 3.1 seconds, depending on the variant you get. Each of them has all-wheel drive, range of like 350 miles plus. It has a distinct look. I do like the dual kind of split headlights. I like the rear a lot. It's very like, it's a futuristic look. I don't know why my brain thought of Tron when I saw this car, but that's what I thought about. But anyways, the Polestar 5 is $135,000 to $160,000. Now, I am going to say this because I was reading an article about Audi and Volkswagen and all these people redoing all of their EV plans. Because if you remember, a couple years ago, everybody was gung-ho about EVs. They were like, listen, getting rid of everything. Don't matter. Ain't no gas engines. We're not doing it. Look at Dodge. Look at Dodge. And they were like, we're not doing anything but EVs. And then everybody saw EVs get introduced, the sales tank, and they came right back to the drawing board and said, we're bringing back the V8s. We're bringing back the ICE power cars. So everybody's reevaluating what they're doing. I do find it interesting that there is, I don't know if this is necessarily a push, but making $135,000 EV sedans is pretty wild because the depreciation on EVs is atrocious. So if you buy this at $160,000, best believe in 2 years, it may be worth $100,000. So it's a lot of depreciation on a car that is at a very niche person. Because if you want an EV like an electric sedan because you just want to get from point A to B and you don't have a long commuter, you don't want to deal with an ICE powered car or gas and anything like that, $160,000 is like a model, it's a Plaid. It's like the Model S P100Ds from back in the day. It is a high performance sedan for a niche market because you're talking about an EV. But I guess they already had this in a pipeline, and Polestar has other cars. They have the Polestar 2, they have the 3, they have the 4. So they have a variety of versions and cars you can get that don't have to be this high of a level. So this is aimed at those people that are like, I love Polestar, but I want a little bit more. I was looking at a Tesla S Plaid, but I want it from Polestar. This is going to answer that question. The interior, though, I know that Volvo Scandinavian design is minimalist by nature. That is what it is. But I just don't like the way their center infotainment looks like it's just a tablet leaning against the screen. I just wish it was just some type of integration better. That is all that I would look for. It's just a little bit better. Just it seems just a little too plain at this price point. 135,000. I don't think this interior feels special enough. Not at this price range. The drivetrain and the performance and the outside look the part. But when I open the door, I wouldn't feel like I'm getting into something that would tell me I spent almost $200,000 because its interior looks very similar to the other Polestars. So it's not, I feel like there needs to be starting to be a bigger separation, especially when EVs are talking about keeping costs low or having very expensive models, but because EVs share a lot of things with their platform, the interior has to start making a bigger push away from the standard models. If you look at an AMG S-Class in a standard C-Class, like the interior difference is massive. Like you're not jumping into S-Class like, that feels just like my C-Class. No, it doesn't. And I think when it comes to these high-level EVs, I wish that there was more of a push for the interior to be separated from the smaller base model ones. Now, getting into kind of a discussion about something that happened within the GR Corolla news, not Corolla updates. We're going to get to that in a second, but just in the news of social media, there is a performance company out there called OTL Performance. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I got asked a lot about what I think about this. And I wasn't about to make the whole video because I don't think they're not a bad company. OTL Performance makes great parts for the GR Corolla. They make an intercooler. I just thought about getting. They have intercooler pipes. They have an exhaust. They have a bunch of parts that you can get for the GR Corolla that they develop in-house. And that is something that is to be praised, especially in-house in the US from a company. That is great to hear. Now, some of the controversy came because there's a video they put out showing a GR Corolla doing a donut in a parking lot. And then the next scene of the video, it shows that the motor was blown. Like they show a motor that's blown. It said, it has like the oh no sound in the back. Now I said it looks like oil starvation. Maybe that's why the engine blew, because the oil was just one side of the engine. You're over there hitting the rev limiter and there's no oil there. And then boom, here we go. Some people agree with that. Then a couple days after, they were like, actually, that was not what happened. The car that you saw in the video is fine, but actually the motor that was originally in that blue GR Corolla did blow up because of valve float when we were testing it, and it dropped the valve and it blew the motor. The issue that I had with the whole entire reel and the following video was like, why? And here I'm gonna tell you why. The original video did something like 2 million views on the reel, which from a social media standpoint, if you're the social media manager at a company, you're clapping it up like, oh, Sam, I went viral. I got, 202 million people looked at it. Our numbers are up. All those type of things are the metrics that you look at. And when it comes to the GR Corolla, in the very beginning, a couple years ago, maybe like a year ago, there was all this controversy of a few people that had a blown motor on their car for suspicious reasons. I talked about it myself because people are like, yo, I heard these joints can blow up at 85 miles an hour, like we're going back to the future or other stuff like that. And it wasn't the case. It was a whole bunch of misinformation, things out of context, and people took it and ran with it. So much so that it was a running meme. So when they put that video up of it doing a donut and saying that the motor blew, it immediately took off. Everybody ran with it and said, yeah, I told you, them cars ain't good. I told you, them things just be blowing up. Now, mind you, I always stand on the side that says we are the only ones blowing up motors like this, and the other countries who got GR Yaris's, who got the same exact motor, little tweaks here and there, aren't doing that. And there are plenty of videos from the likes of people in Australia, Japan, and the UK to tell you how to tune and how to modify a GR Corolla or a GR Yaris to the G16E GTS motor and what you can expect and what you can look for. Valve float was one of those things. That's why they have kits and stuff like that. But anyways, getting away from all that. The issue I had with the video, because I know after the second video, they're like, ha ha ha, just clickbait, we're just laughing, so on and so forth. It was, I just find it unnecessary when a company has to do something like that and they're trying to sell parts on a car and you're leaning into something that will make people doubt the platform. I don't know how that actually helps your business. And I'm not a business owner. So maybe it did, because then you get people to interact with the video and the reel, and maybe you can then explain it to them. But if the next video you have, which it's got nothing near close to the same amount of views, is you explaining what actually happened, then the other 1.9 million people who didn't watch the new reel aren't going to sit there. And I'm not saying exactly 1.9 people watch. That's not how views work. It doesn't mean a singular person. What I'm saying is that the people that believed the first video may have already ran off with their final opinion and said that her car is not good. And they're not going to come back to see your follow-up video to tell them, hey, I was just joking or just clickbait. Actually, we have blown the motor testing the extreme limits of it, which is good to do when you are a performance company, to know the limits of a car so that you can build packages for consumers and customers and your clients to have the car and you know the safe limit of it. That is actually very smart and what they should do and what almost all of them do. But to have the very first video you have show something that is not true, and then the second follow-up is, oh, actually, this is what really happened, under the guise of an issue that the vehicle had when it came to the public perception of its reliability and its performance. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, as a fan and the owner of a GR Corolla, I looked at it and said, I don't understand why you would do that. We already know that it took a mountain of people, myself included, telling people who would ask me and say like, hey, I heard it does this. I heard it catches on fire. I heard it does this. And we're like, no, it doesn't. It does this. I have this. I got 50,000 miles on it. And I'm doing those videos on my YouTube channel at 30,000 and 40,000 and 50,000 to show people who were thinking that it can't be reliable modified that it can be. So then when a well-known performance shop who makes parts for the car drops a reel that goes viral and says, yo, we were doing donuts and the motor blew, everybody's like, yep, see, we're back at it again. That car can't last. And then the next video, like, we lied, it was clickbait, but actually we're developing. I'm like, guys, I don't know who's running your social media. I don't know who your social media manager is, but I can tell you this. You got to look at this from a holistic view. The car already gets backlash, or it gets a lot of flack for what had happened from previous people who didn't know what they were doing with this car, and questionable people modifying and tuning the car in the US, because obviously if you go outside the country, it's not that type of conversation. Enough so that I've talked to other companies outside of this country and they said, yeah, I don't know why that's happening for you guys when you should be doing X, Y, and Z. So it just seemed odd. Now I know in this era we live, virality is enough for people to sell their soul. I'm not saying they sold their soul. I'm just saying people will do the most extreme things to go viral for a few clicks. I'm just saying they're not a bad company as far as parts go. I just was a questionable choice to make when it came to that reel. That's my thoughts on it. Yes, it's over now. We move along because that's how fast social media works. And I would still tell you buy their parts because their stuff is very good. I just think that was an odd choice to do if you're trying to get people to engage with your social media content, to engage with your company, and to learn more about the GR Corolla and what you're testing. It should have been the first video, should have been the second one. It should have been you saying, hey, we've been testing the GR Corolla and we found the upper limits when it comes to valve float and what happens when valve float drops a valve. That video would have been much more informative to the community and to the overall car, and it would have backed whatever you're working on. Because if there would have been a part or something that you're working on alongside of that, or a package for something that you to deliver, you would have introduced that with something to buy from your website. That would be a better business move. And I don't know, I don't own a business. I'm just saying, from my perspective, that would have worked a little bit better than going viral for people being shocked and awed and questioning the platform and not buying something from you or engaging in your business. That's what I would say. Now, GR Corolla updates. Now, if you're looking at this video, you notice there is something on the desk. I don't know if you can see it here, or my hand is. You can kind of see it. Well, actually, no, you can't see it. This guy right here. Let me just bring this out right here. Okay, this right here is one of the most high quality shifters I've ever touched. Now, I'm not gonna do a full thing on this right now because we're gonna give that as proper. We're gonna give that as proper due. But that is a new shifter from the company Dark Matter that I talked about a number of podcasts ago. It is here in my hands. It feels absolutely crazy. This guy, man, his name is Eric, Dark Matter, engineer, designer, owner, business owner. This right here feels crazy. Like, just messing around with it on the desk, I'm like, the shifts that this car is about to have are going to be, I can't even wait to install this. I'm probably going to do it tomorrow. Or I'm going to prepare myself maybe for on the weekend, but regardless, I can't wait. So the shifter's going in. Other things that are happening, kind of channel updates. The car reviews are moving along. I love it. It's kind of a muscle I've been working on. I have the Honda Passport video up there. The Palisade one is doing extremely well. I got invited to the Texas Truck Invitational, which is happening at the end of this month, where we're going to go up to Eagle Canyon, I believe, and we're going to drive a bunch of trucks and things like that. That's going to be fun. You know, I'm going to record it. Hopefully I can have even a bigger presence when it comes to recording it, like on social media and like putting up stories, because the reason why I don't do it as often as I should is because my phone, I have an old iPhone, a 10s Max, which is 7 years old. I'm finally going to buy a new iPhone. Okay. It's finally decided to really just start breaking on me. So I'm going to get an iPhone 17 tomorrow. Well, I'll order it, okay, whenever it comes in. So hopefully that comes in at the same time, and then I can have a better interaction with the things I want to do, maybe even go live and things like that. But Texas Truck Invitational, then the SEMA show's coming. I can't even wait for the SEMA show. Like, you want to talk about excited? I'm beyond excited. And I have an idea I want to do with some companies I'm going to work with. I'm going to do something that I don't even want to say I'm going to do. There's something I'm going to do when it comes to presenting my case to these companies to want to work with me. I'm going to do something that I haven't seen anybody do, and I like presentation. I'll just say that. I like presentation. So the channel's moving along. The car reviews are coming. I'm doing more stuff as automotive stuff. We got more stuff coming with the GR Corolla. Clearly, we got the shifter in here to put on. I just put on a JQ Works hub system with my friend Hachiburu, Chris. We put that on. That video's coming as well. I'm going to swap out some other parts too in the car. We're moving and we're shaking. And we're going to come back next week for another episode of the CarQuicks Podcast. So before I go and before you go, just remember, do as you wish, do as you may. The backdrop is going to be finished at some point in time. Okay. I don't know when, but it will get there. Do yourself a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media. Follow the podcast. Tell your friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. I stole that from Ben Baller Podcast when he used to do it. So put it out there. Tell people to join the CarQuicks universe. Follow me there. I'll see y'all around next week. Peace.